Hello again, and welcome back to Quarantography, the only YouTube show that still doesn't have a consistent intro. I'm just trying to teach myself After Effects, to be honest. Shit, should I have called it Disaster Class? Today I woke up to the sun streaming through the window for the first time in what felt like ages, and I thought this would be a really great time to talk about a subject that's very near and dear to me. Natural sunlight. Harsh, hard sunlight. As many of you know, my last name is DeZon, which, as most of you probably don't know, is Dutch for the sun. Ever since I made that connection, I've been kind of leaning hard into the concept of sunlight. I've never been a particular fan of cloudy light. I think it can be a little mushy and boring. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good way to make sure your images aren't bad. Sunlight can be a little harder to work with, but the rewards, in my opinion, are much greater than those you can get with cloudy light. So this is going to be a lighting tutorial on how to mimic sunlight. I saw the sun streaming in the windows in my kitchen, and I very hastily assembled a easy little still life with fruit. I'm going to wait for that direct sunlight to leave, and then I'm going to do my level best to imitate it with artificial light. Now, on paper, direct sun is actually one of the easiest lights to mimic. It's kind of harsh, so it's from a very small point source. So all you really need to do to get the broad stroke of it is to have a small point source, just like a flash without any diffusion on it, without any umbrella or diffusion at all. Have it be as far away from the subject as possible and as bright as possible. Those three steps will get you 90% of the way. A lot of people then will find an issue. The image still looks fake, flashy, as it were. And that's because real sunlight isn't just one light. It's actually at least two, and possibly up to countless. But the real broad strokes of it are small, warm point of light, and on a cloudless day, one large blue fill at a much lower level than the sun. But that's why it's important to think about the colors of your lights in this. In this case, I just have a little bit of sun coming through the window, so it should actually be mostly doable with one light. If you think about the window here, you have the sun just kind of in the middle, and around it you might have a small swath of blue pushing through. And that's going to be part of my light setup, but it might be tuned down so low that you don't even notice it. But if you're thinking you're outside and you want to make something look like it was outside, think about where the sun is. Think about the sun here, surrounded by blue, and think about what you have to do to make that happen. If you're not familiar with gels, gels are a small piece of plastic that you attach to the outside of a light to adjust its color a little bit. The most common are called CTO and CTB, color temperature orange and color temperature blue. So that's what we're going to be using here. The good thing about gels, in photography at least, is if what you're looking for is one light that's warm and the other that's cool, you don't necessarily need both CTO and CTB. All you need is maybe a CTO that's a little bit stronger and a non-gelled flash. That way you can just set the white balance in between the warm and the cool, and the shadows will seem a little cooler and the highlights will seem a little bit warmer, for example. So it's really about the tension between those two colors, CTO and ungelled, which is what I usually do. My go-to for sunlight mimicry is about half CTO to nothing, and then I'll set the white balance somewhere in between. So in this case, because I'm trying to mimic what's coming through my window, I used one bare flash right where the window was, and right behind it, another light. Another thing to think about is that as the day progresses, the orangeness of the sun changes. In the beginning and the end of the day, when it's at these very low angles, the sun is actually quite orange. It's quite warm on the Kelvin scale. And as it goes up and up, as it illuminates more of the blue sky, the light itself becomes a lot less warm. So think about that when you're trying to mimic the sun. This is a second example. I'm doing it on a white background so that you can kind of pretend we're outside. This will be some self-portraiture, very exciting for me. And I'm going to be mimicking the noonday sun and the sunset sun. For the noonday sun, I'm going to be blasting the ceiling with quite a bit of bluer light, once again ungelled light, and using like maybe a quarter CT on the sun. And for the sunset light, I'm going to be taking that fill light way down. I'm going to be moving the sun light, or the key light, a little bit further down and gelling it a bit warmer with respect to the sky light. Let's go to the examples. So unfortunately there was a bit of a mishap with the video, so the initial setup you're not going to see here. But you see us set up on one light stand, two lights, one pointed directly at the ceiling as the fill, the sky fill, and the other pointed directly at our still life setup. The first test I'm taking here is with no lights. As you can see, I have killed the ambient light in the room. Anything in the artificial image is strictly from one of these two flashes, or both. So right, I'm turning on only the fill flash here. This is what I call building from fill. I learned this from fantastic photographer Dan Winters. What the idea is, if you start with your lowest flash, that allows you to get a good sense of how deep the shadows are going to be. Basically, shadows are where your key doesn't hit. So if you look here, I'm trying to key in these shadows so they're about as deep as they were in the original image. Using only that back flash that's blasting into the ceiling, I'm attempting to get a sense of how deep I want these shadows to be. So now you see the shadows coming in. That means that's about as deep as I thought those shadows should start. I've turned on the key. So now I've turned on the key light, the sun light. As you see, I've actually managed to get a pretty good approximation of the shadow play from the original image. It's a little bit off. There's a couple reasons for that. One, it's just the way I have them on that light stand. It's just, I don't have quite as much angle control as I'd like. Now, as you see, I am having an issue here when the key light is starting to fill in the shadows. What's happening is that light is bouncing off the ceiling and the nearby walls and filling its own self. So what I'm doing here is using something called cinefoil to just keep that from happening. I'm avoiding spill. So now the only light that's going to be hitting is from the key and the fill where I want them to. Now you see the shadows are back to being very deep again. So in the highlights, you're pretty much only getting the key plus a tiny amount of the fill, and in the shadows, you're only getting the fill. Already we're pretty close. The only thing I'm gonna do from here, after I maybe dial in a couple more shots, is I'm going to try and get back some of that texture from the original window. As you see, there's some shadows in the corners from the window frame itself. And in order to do that, I'm going to homebrew, as it were, what's called a cookie, or cucaloris, sometimes known as a gobo, or go-between. As you can see, I'm grabbing this fruit basket we have that happens to have this perfect window pane pattern, and I'm holding it up next to the light. And as you can see, in the artificial shot, we're starting to get this really nice light texture that in some ways actually almost looks more real than the actual shot. We're really starting to get to that point. A lot of what makes natural light look natural are these imperfect moments where the light is not perfectly dispersed throughout the scene. And something like a gobo or a cookie is really useful for that. So yeah, we've got a few great examples here. Stuff I'd be happy to, especially without, trying to one-one compare it to the original natural. I would be very happy to call approximated sunlight. We'll move on now to our next example on a human being, namely myself. I'm tearing down this original light, but I will actually come back to that position for the sunset look. But we're starting here with an overhead direct sun, noonday sun look with all the problems that entails. You're going to see some deep shadows under the eyes, strong glasses shadows. It's not going to be the most flattering light in the world, but it should give you the sense that there is the noonday sun overhead. So first thing I'm doing is setting up the clouds look. The clouds are going to be defined by a single flash here pointed directly into the ceiling once again. I'm putting this light stand just out of frame, and I'm putting it relatively high into the ceiling. I'm going to put it just a little in front of my face, so that at least it's somewhat flattering cloud cover. If I put it behind me, it wouldn't look quite right, 'cause in reality cloud cover is everywhere, and in here we're really creating a soft light only about maybe 8 feet in diameter. So where you place it doesn't matter. Here it's going to be in front of me, so it's a kind of soft toppy light. And I'm going to actually show you what that would look like fully exposed, and then stop it down so it's a low fill, as we discussed earlier. So here's it fully, or almost fully exposed. As you can see, it's not a bad light. This is once again how I feel about cloudy light in general. By itself, it's kind of a nice light. You know, it's smooth. It makes your skin look good, but it's not particularly dynamic. It serves its purpose. And so what I'm going to be doing is dialing it like way down so that the direct sun has more of a place to shine. This is what it looks like if it's more behind you, by the way. That's me experimenting there. That looks more natural. So now that you see I've got the skylight dialed into an almost imperceptible level, it's still there, it's doing something, believe it or not. I am grabbing my second flash, and I'm going to crane it way above. Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to be out of frame, but you'll see it get hoisted out of frame in a minute. But the idea is it's going to be almost directly above me, maybe slightly to the right, camera right, and very high. Obviously not quite as high as the real sun, but we'll get a good approximation. I've once again gelled this light very lightly. It's a half CTO gel that I've covered about a quarter of the flash with, so we can call that 1/8 CTO. Here we go. Great face I'm making there. I'll just keep that text there as a reminder. Getting there. And yeah, also head position matters. It's starting to look a little bit more natural. I notice it's a little bit underexposed. Part of what makes something look super sunny is how it's exposed. Yeah, right around there is looking about right. Yeah, and you can tell I'm pretty happy with this light because I'm starting to pose. It's a really hot day now. I do like that light that the glasses casts. It's very interesting. I like that one. So you're probably gonna see it later. That's kind of fun too. But you can start to get the sense that this could be lit by the sun. So now I'm gonna adjust this light. I'm going to keep this skylight exactly where it is. I'm not even going to change the power of these two lights. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the key light here, taking it down from its direct overhead position. I'm leaving the skylight where it is, actually. I'm not even going to adjust the power of either of these lights, to be honest. I'm taking this gel from its quarter position and covering the entire flash, so now it's a half CTO light. And I'm actually putting it back over here where it was for the first exercise. So now it's at a much lower angle. And as you see, it's a lot warmer. But that's what sun looks like when it's around that time of day. It's a lot warmer. I play around a little bit. Get a shot I feel like I can use. There it is. And we're done. So now that you know how to make your own sun, why don't you take a Quarantography approved vacation somewhere? Perhaps Puerto Rico or Italy. So that's how you imitate sunlight. I hope you've enjoyed the examples. I hope you've learned something, and I hope it's something you can do yourselves. Assignment time? Take a self-portrait or a portrait of somebody else if you have someone in the house with you using these techniques. I'd love to see your imitations of sunlight. Please join us on Patreon. There's a lot of really great goodies there, namely the community where we can discuss details about these assignments, lighting, equipment, what you're watching right now. It's actually really great. And yeah, follow us on Instagram. That's at @shootquarantography. And if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, do the thing, get out there. Just kidding, don't get out there, stay inside and shoot. Thank you.